The Brown Park Podcast is brought to you by Grow Clinics. They're Australia's leading hair transplant clinics, and you can go to growclinics.com.au. Hello.
G'day, mates.
Today we're talking about the art of interrogation.
Oh, been through that a few times.
How? What?
When I was younger, I'd get home from mum and dad, and get home to mum and dad, and I'd be like, where have you been? What have you been doing? And it was the ultimate test of how much I could skirt around the edges of what I was actually doing.
Well, I think this probably takes it up a notch, and I don't think it's your mum and dad that we're speaking to. This is an actual War Crimes Investigator.
Oh, geez, I could have learned a lot from him then. They really could have got some dirt out of me had they been trained.
Anyway, he's going to join us today on the Brown Park Podcast.
The Brown Park Podcast.
Okay, question.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about the ice bath.
Yeah.
Well, it just leads into this episode really, really well.
Yeah, okay. Let's go. We did an ice bath, yes.
We did an ice bath.
Couldn't get when we say we did an ice bath, we said you did an ice bath, yes.
I did an ice bath, and your foot had an ice bath.
My foot had a lovely ice bath.
Yes, yes. So what do you think it would have taken for you to be able to submerge? Because you talked yourself out of it pretty quickly.
I think a nice tepid bath with a margarita might have been all right. Maybe a massage beforehand would have been fine.
So the ice bath, if it was just heated a little bit, would have been the result that you wanted?
If it wasn't so much ice and just bath, yeah, I think I could have done it.
Or if it was like ice latte, you would have been fine.
An ice latte. Oh, look, that would be great too, yeah. Okay. No, I honestly don't know. Now, because it's been the subject of the last podcast, and also you'll hear a bit about it in today's chat, I think I need to do it again just to prove that I probably can't do it a second time.
You will absolutely be doing it the next time. You'll do it for sure.
Yeah. Well, when we did it, Dion, I mean, for those that don't know, and we'll whack the video back up on our social so you can have a look. But you did 8 minutes in the ice bath and I did a foot. And that was about it. I just said no. But yeah, I don't know what it would actually take.
I think we're going to find out next time. So we're going to give it a crack.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Yay. Can't wait.
Yay. Woohoo.
Anyway, let's have a chat to today's guest. His name's Damien Thomas.
The Brown Park Podcast.
This is the height of laziness, right? We're all on the Gold Coast, but we're all in separate houses because we just couldn't be bothered.
I was texting Christo before we jumped on, Damien. I said, look, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit dusty this morning. I gave the margaritas a bit of a nudge during the football last night. So
good. All right, let's have a chat. Damien Thomas, welcome to the podcast, mate.
G'day,
Great
mate.
to be here. Thanks for having me.
Your background, and we'll get to why you're on here because you've invented something that I think is going to help a lot of people with anxiety and stuff. But your background is quite phenomenal.
It's interesting. Yeah, I've had the journey.
For those that don't know, you are a war
Crimes Investigator.
Yeah.
But before that, I finished uni here on the Gold Coast, and then started 2001, which was pretty significant if you think about history. I joined the national security effort, which changed pretty dramatically in September that year.
Yeah. So when did you join?
So I joined in January.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow, baptism of fire.
Yeah. And then by September of that year, just a remarkable decade in national security, to be honest. From September 11 for the next decade was just a remarkable sort of time in national security and counterterrorism around the globe, but especially in Australia.
So what was your role? What did you have to do? What was your involvement in it? Because what you signed up for and what you actually got would be two completely different things.
Well, I was employed. I went through the recruitment process to be an intelligence officer. So, but at that time, the focus was on both what's known as counter-espionage and counter-terrorism. So you could have been doing any of those things. But then after September 11, it's no secret, but everybody was doing counter-terrorism for the next 10 years.
So what did that look like for you then? I mean, what was a day in the life of?
So my role was human intelligence. So where you would have a target group or a target area, we would go in, or I would go into the community, and essentially we would recruit people within that target community to provide us with that information on threats to the community. So the day in the life was really just driving around and meeting with people and talking to them, getting them to assist where we could and provide us information on threats to the community. And obviously back then, a lot of our threats emanated from offshore. So there was some offshore travel and, but essentially really high-paced work, high risk, high threat.
So going out to meet people, was it like an intense situation where you were like, with people with guns and stuff like that? Or were you just going out going, so what do you know?
Yeah, more of the latter, to be honest, because, you'd obviously, you'd work out who you were going to see. So you would try and control that environment to some respect. But look, most of the time it was trying to recruit people that had information that would be useful. We knew that would be useful for us. So very rarely did we ever feel as if we were at threat in terms of physical threat. But yeah, most of the time it was sitting down at over a coffee and trying to convince someone to help.
Was there much of it here in Australia? Like, because it almost felt like we were somewhat removed from the whole thing.
No, there were real threats, ongoing threats, and it's played out through the court system. We've got dozens of convicted terrorists here in Australia, and if nothing had been done back then, I'm sure we would have faced some calamity. Absolutely no doubt in my mind that the threat was real and it was enduring for quite some time.
Holy shit.
We live in a bubble, don't we?
It's what the public don't know, right? That's the police and the forces do behind the scenes that keep us safe.
Yeah, it's look, it does come into that public view when it hits the courts to some extent. Not all the information comes out, but look, there was this real sense back then when we were going to work that the risk was real. We knew it was real. We could see it playing out day by day. There was information always coming in from within the community or from overseas partner agencies, and there was never a sense that we're just going through the motions here. Just because we have to. It was always, there is a threat. We know people are trying to undertake acts of terrorism in Australia, and we have to respond to that. There's no doubt that there was active planning, multiple acts of terrorism in Australia, and through that, through luck and hard work, we avoided much of it. Of course, there was the one incident, unfortunately, the Lint Cafe that we witnessed down in Sydney, and that was this sobering reminder of what we're up against.
And did you see any of that coming? Whether or not you can elaborate, but what sort of threats were we facing at that time? Look,
there was a small group of extremists that were committed to undertaking an act of terrorism in Australia, and that went on for quite some time. And we're not talking about massive numbers of people, but you only need to miss one.
Yep.
And then you have a disaster. And so that was the enduring pressure is you just couldn't afford to make a mistake. And, we saw what happened with September 11 and, the review into September 11 articulated, different agencies had different parts of the puzzle. And if it had been put together at the time, it might not have occurred. And that was in everybody's mind. Well, have we got the full piece of the puzzle, and are we sharing information correctly? And that was always what we were thinking at the time.
And how do agencies go with that? Are they talking, or does one agency doesn't want to give up the information because they've worked hard to get it? What does that look like?
Look, the government, to its credit, puts in some really helpful structures around information sharing, ensuring that there's cooperation. But in the end, it comes down to personalities, and in as long as you've got that willingness amongst the different agencies to share information, there's never a problem. There's always a way to share information. And I think Australia did that really well, especially between the Australian Federal Police, the state agencies, and ASIO, for example. The information sharing and what was put in place was done really well.
State agencies.
It's not nothing's perfect, but it was good.
So what was a day in the life of you like back then? Because that seems like it seems very high pressure, and you wouldn't want to, for better term, fuck it up.
No, I think it was really important to try and maintain a balance back then, because it was important work, but also I loved it, and so I wanted to be there. More hours than I should have been, and could have consumed us 24/7. When one thing to bear in mind is if you are someone that is speaking to human sources in the community, you can't just turn your phone off at 5 and then turn it back on at 8 the next morning.
Yeah,
and do the same on the weekends. You have to be contactable 24/7, and you might run more than one human source. In fact, you probably are going to run multiple human sources that want to speak to you, maybe at 11 o'clock at night, maybe at 1 in the morning, maybe with something important, maybe with something that's banal. But in any case, you had to remain contactable. And so in that respect, you really had to manage your time, manage your well-being, because otherwise you're simply at work 24/7.
Yeah.
And I think back then, I grew up on the Gold Coast, and I spent a lot of time surfing. I think that was part of how I managed myself. I'd still maintain where I could my lifestyle, but definitely the job could be all consuming.
I mean, how'd your family hold up during that whole period? Because it would have been a strain on that part of your life too, wouldn't it?
Well, I think that the main strain was that aspect of never being able to switch off, having these phones on you 24/7 and literally having to answer those phones at any time. And I think that's a really unusual way to run your life, I think, especially if those phones are going really consistently throughout the night and on weekends. I could imagine, and I think at some point it might have been frustrating for my now wife. But at the end of the day, she could see what the purpose was.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, she would cop half of a conversation just because I had to take the phone call in the car, and was probably wondering, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, right.
What are you discussing?
And it's not like she could, in your line of work, she couldn't go, just don't answer this one.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
Who is she?
No.
Who is she?
Yeah.
Brown Pock.
Want to say thanks to our lovely sponsor, Grow Clinics, because they continue to support this podcast and have done since day dot.
For day dot, they gave us a leg up for a couple of chumps wanting to do something stupid.
So far, according to their website, growclinics.com.au, which, might I add, has had a recent revamp, they have transplanted 22,367,892 hairs.
Well, I can account for, I think it was like 5,000 of those.
Yeah, I think I was about 7 or 8, I think.
Wait, no, you were closer to 10,000, weren't you?
Let me have a look at the website where I am actually listed.
You're on the website. See, that's how successful you were.
Transplanted hairs, 7,676.
And look at you.
Look at it. Well, this is a podcast, so you can't really
Well, you
look
can't.
at it.
Picture it, would you?
If you go to the Grow website, growclinics.com.au, you can actually see the photos of the before and the afters.
You even put up a video from our Dubai and Chernobyl trip on our social media, and that was pre-hair transplant for you.
Yes.
Holy crap.
I know. They have a solution for any stage of hair loss, and they design a comprehensive strategy to help regain your hair, combining their leading hair transplant techniques with prescription treatments and everyday products to get you the best results. They are the home of the most refined and minimally invasive hair transplant method that ensures natural-looking results with the highest density and virtually no noticeable scarring. So if you want to have a look at some befores and afters split screens, which are just phenomenal, on their website, growclinics.com.au, because you can defy genetics with Grow.
Follow the Brown Park Podcast on socials at Brown Park Official.
So when you're sitting down with somebody and you're trying to get the information, are they willing to just sort of hand that over to you, or do you have manipulation techniques that you would use to try and extract the information from them? How does that work?
Look, most of the time, the people that we would speak to understood the importance of the work that we were doing, that didn't want to see anything happen in Australia. So the aspect of getting them to assist us wasn't tremendously difficult in a lot of cases. However, what we're talking here is about loyalties. So when you're speaking to someone, you might be asking them to give you information about a family member or a lifelong friend or a member of their community. And so it came down to, the bottom line is, did this person like you and did they trust you? And I think that the same applies to life. And even if you think about salesmanship, those qualities are so important. Can this person be trusted with what I'm going to tell them? And a lot of the time it was a matter of spending time sitting with the person, explaining exactly who we were, what we were doing, why we were doing it, getting to know that person, letting that person get to know us. Mm-hmm. And then once you have this, I guess, modicum of rapport, they're more likely to give you something. But look, the main point was that most people didn't want to see anything happen in Australia, and by that I mean an act of terrorism. So most people are willing to provide help.
Did you pay anyone? I mean, stupid question, maybe it's not.
No.
Do you pay sources at all?
Look, some sources are paid, but it's probably the exception rather than the rule.
Mm-hmm.
Because we used to talk about motivation for people to help, and money is not a good motivation when we're dealing with people. Patriotism is a great one because we know that where they're coming from and that they genuinely want to help, and they don't want, it's not a transaction, so to speak. But to answer your question, yes, some people did want to get paid, and it's nothing in the realm of what many people think in terms of how much. It might not have been much at all. They're a couple of $100 a week, for example. But yes, some sources do get paid.
So it's not like somebody sitting there going, I want $1 million in a brown paper bag and I will give you all the information you want, like the movies, right?
Well, look, that does happen, but not here in Australia.
Yeah.
There's, I think some of our partner agencies overseas might have that type of resource, but I can tell you it didn't happen here in Australia.
But it makes sense though, right? I mean, I get why if somebody has information, they want something in return, then I guess, why not pay for the information if it's going to save lives?
Yeah. Look, and what you have to be obviously really careful about is validating that information. You can imagine straight after September 11, there's a public line for people to call. We went from, I'm just plucking figures here, maybe 5 calls a week to, 2,000 calls a week with someone saying that, Osama bin Laden's having coffee down the road and, yeah, I've got some, information for some money. So, you had to try and sift through a lot of that at the time.
So I'm going to ask the obvious question here. How much do we not know in the public that goes on behind the scenes?
Look, a great deal.
Yeah.
A great deal, because we can't celebrate our successes.
Yeah.
And that's a really important point. It's obviously we did do a lot of good work in positive interventions, which meant that there was never an attack, but often that work never saw the light of day in court for one reason or another. Maybe we intervened at a very early stage. So look, unsurprising, there's a lot that the public probably weren't aware of for good reason. But as I said, the very significant operations did come to court, and the public were well aware of some of that work.
Well, and then when you're surveilling a potential threat, What's the pressure like to, because when do you actually pull the trigger on arresting them or bring them to justice? Because if you're like 1 or 2 days late, then the event could happen in between that time. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, and this is a really interesting point because there often has to be a threshold, obviously, for evidence. And it was a grey area, and one that this point here was one of great contention amongst the agencies, because how long do you let something run? But if you intervene too early and don't have the evidence, well, then you're letting the group know, the individuals know that they've been watched, and letting them know that we're onto them, but don't have enough evidence, so they learn, okay, we've made a mistake, we need to change the way we're operating, and we'll make it more difficult for the security services to watch us. So, look, it was a really, really difficult aspect of the operations because it's not simple to put together a brief of evidence for court. I'm not a police officer. I can't speak at length on that. But what I did observe is it takes a great deal of work to get that evidence. But sometimes you're really concerned that, okay, what are we missing here and how much further can we let it run?
That must be like super tough. I mean, Dab, and like for you personally, how does the pressure of that all hold up?
Yeah, bearing some of that responsibility could be difficult, but I guess that's why, we'd set up these great structures amongst agencies to thoroughly talk through it, and you really just had to concentrate on what your responsibility was, double check, triple check, and then rely on the person beside you that they've done the same. And beyond that, you just go to work, and you there's always an aspect of luck in everything.
Yeah.
And you just hope, okay, well, let's hope that we've got luck on our side. But, up until that point, you're just trying to do everything you humanly can to ensure you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's.
So how does somebody then go from a job like that to trying to invent something for anxiety? I mean, obviously what you have been doing, is an anxious environment, but how did you then... Yeah, I'm curious to see how you went from that kind of role then into a thing like Bobby, which is something that you're winning awards for and it's going to make you a very rich man, I believe.
Not yet. Look, there was an intervening period, and it was when I finished working for the government, I actually worked in southern Turkey for a non-government body. So in 2014, the Islamic State was really coming to the fore in Syria, and I was contacted to start an investigation into war crimes in Syria. And so I travelled and lived in southern Turkey. And that was an extremely difficult part personally and professionally in my life, because I'd left behind my family, my wife, to live in isolation on my own over there, starting up an investigation against one of the most violent criminal groups in the world.
Oh, right.
And I felt completely, I guess, exposed in terms of limited protections. And I'm not working for a government, I'm working on my own. And throughout that time I was there, I started to feel quite anxious and stressed.
I wonder why.
What a shit work environment. Let's just put it out there.
Jesus Christ.
And it was everything. It was also the content of what I was dealing with, listening to what the Islamic State were doing to people. It was death threats, everything coming together. At some point I said, well, I just need a bit of a time out here. So I went and did a yoga retreat for 3 days in Turkey, and it was 3 days of yoga, but it was slow breathing essentially. And I found that was something that had a remarkable impact, positive impact on how I was managing myself at the time. And I thought, okay, well, there's something to this. And I ultimately came back to Australia, and I'm a psychologist. So I started my own practice. And 90% of my clients that come in have high states of anxiety. So most psychologists will teach slow breathing, as I did to my clients. But many of them will come in after the first session or second session and say, I just couldn't get into the habit of getting into the slow breathing. Even though I went onto the apps, I just really couldn't form that process or get into the habit. And so I thought, well, look, we've got to find a better way here to coach people to slow down their breathing. And probably the best way is something that they can hold in their hand and coach themselves to do so. And so that's where the idea came from, recognizing that, how prolific anxiety is. And look, the quickest and easiest way to reduce stress and anxiety is to slow your breathing down. And unfortunately, many people don't recognize that. I think it's changing now. We've got guys like Wim Hof. There's an author, James Nestor, wrote a wonderful book called Breathe. But I think I'm hoping more people understand that they can control the way they feel simply by changing the way they breathe.
Yeah, and it's true because when Christo and I did an ice bath a little while ago, I went into it. Well, let's call that what we spoke about in the last podcast. Christo couldn't get beyond his ankles, but when I got in, it was just all about breathing through it, and it was just me focusing on that, and it took everything else away long enough for me to be able to settle and calm. So I totally get where breathing in any moment can center you and slow things down.
Yeah, this is a really important point, that the way we breathe can control the way we feel. And when you get into an ice bath, by way of example, your body goes into shock and stress. And the first thing that you do is your breathing changes to hyperventilation. So it's rapid breathing in and out. It's, I'm so cold. But it's the same when we're stressed. We actually hyperventilate, and that's just the body's response. And it's the same for all of us. It's fight or flight. It's, what's going on here? My heart's going fast. I'm starting to rapidly breathe out of my mouth. And the exact counterpoint to that is slowing your breathing down to 5 seconds and breathing in and out of your nose.
I think a lot of the problem is that, particularly with the breathing, and you said, a lot of your clients will go away and go back and go, no, I couldn't do it. I think people feel like, and it becomes a self-conscious thing. I think people feel like they look like a dick, even though there's nobody around when they do it. They feel like it's not right. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where something like what you've got out, the Bobby, will help people, because they go, okay, well, now I'm using something. It's like a distractive tool. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And look, what we're trying to do is normalize the practice of slow breathing, and having something in your hand. Part of the invention was looking at, all right, well, remember the fidget spinners when that came out? That they were brought out by a lady to help kids with ADHD, because she realized that kids love. Well, most of us love playing with something in our hand, and it can be therapeutic.
Shut up, Dion. Dion, don't say anything.
It took look, I'm breathing through
I know,
that
you're breathing
right
through
now.
that. I can see that, yeah.
I've got to get you a Bobby, mate.
Well, I've got one, but it's just too small. Anyway. As you were?
Yeah, so having something in your hand that rhythmically you squeeze in and releases can be incredibly beneficial. And there are other aspects. There's something that psychologists routinely use called progressive muscle relaxation. It's simply where you squeeze something tight and then let it release. So there's multiple aspects of the device that are therapeutic, but the main one is, and I've seen this myself, without something to actually guide you and remind you to breathe slowly, most of us will only do that when you're in a dedicated practice like yoga or a conscious breathing class. And that's useful. But when we need to slow breathe is often when we're at work, when we're in the car, when we're on an airplane. And that's where Bobby comes into its own, because it's, you can transport it anywhere. You can use it surreptitiously. People won't even know you're using it. You might use it in your pocket, and it can guide you that way.
I'll tell you what, I think I need a Bobby for when I'm driving up the M1. at 6 o'clock in the morning heading to work because, I'm not breathing very well at that point in time. One person, like, just learn to merge, you stupid.
That's exactly when you need Bobby.
So how does it work? What's it actually do?
So it's a tactile device you hold in your hand, and there's a valve on the top, and it's got 3 settings. So the best rate of breathing to reduce stress and anxiety is 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out of your nose. But that's not easy to achieve. It's harder than you think to breathe at that rate. So there's a setting of 2.5 seconds. You can squeeze in for 2.5 seconds, and it releases for 2.5 seconds. Then there's a 4-second rate as well. So essentially, you can choose the rate of your breathing to whatever's comfortable to you. Hopefully, most people can get to the 5.5 seconds because that's where we know the benefit is. And then, there are other aspects to the device. There's a component that sits on your palm that removes. So we've got what we call an ice palm pad. So you can pull it out of your freezer, put it onto the device. Why would we do that? Well, another aspect of psychology that's been well studied and taught is if you're in a really high state of anxiety or panic and you go and grab some ice, for example, it takes you out of your mind and into your body. So there's aspects to Bobby that can be used in that way as well.
I do need to ask, is it waterproof? Because maybe Christo needs one of these for the next ice bath challenge that we do.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's waterproof. Take one, Christo.
We need to give it a crack because he needs to give it another go because he's at a different part or phase in his life. Yeah. And maybe with the Bobby, that in your hand, because your other Bobby's going to be way too small in the ice bath, that will help.
Brown
Park. Big thanks to our sponsors, Grow Clinics, who continue to support this podcast. They will help you defy genetics by giving you the hair you've always wanted.
Oh, yes, you majestic beast.
And if you've always wondered how much a hair transplant costs, every head of hair is different. And at Grow, their pricing reflects not just the individualised care, but also the quality of the service, the experience of the team, and the latest technology they use and the outstanding results they achieve. You can find out by going to their website, clicking on the Learn More, and find out a rough estimate of how much a hair transplant would cost.
And you can have a mohawk too.
Don't even. He went out with a mohawk the other day and looked ridiculous because he was trying to bait his wife.
I looked legendary. And do you know why I did a mohawk?
Because you could?
Because I can. So you leave me be. Thank you, Grow. My wife doesn't want to thank you so much, but thank you.
I love on their website, it says if you've landed on this page, chances are you've already done some research.
And that's so true.
They will actually tell you on the website how the hair transplant is calculated as far as cost goes and everything that goes into what you will go through with the hair transplant.
And if you don't want to get there yet, just reach out to either of us. We're more than happy to have a chat offline and tell you about our journey and what we went through and how we landed where we are.
Absolutely, and payment plans are available. So they've partnered up with a couple of financiers and to make it convenient for you to be able to pay for your hair transplant over time rather than one lump sum up front. Defy genetics with Grow Clinics and go to their website, growclinics.com.au.
The Brown Podcast.
You've actually won design awards for this thing as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so in September, the Australian Good Design Awards is an annual award. We won a gold medal for Bobby and, went down to Melbourne. It was a great night. Also in our category, interestingly, was the Avatar 2 movie. I don't know whether you've seen it or not, but James Cameron had invented a full face mask for that movie. So that's the competition we're up against.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, no, it was a great night down there.
So you beat James Cameron?
Oh, they got a gold medal as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Damn it, that would have been good on your resume, right?
but we were competitive against James Cameron.
Well, how good is that? I mean, at least yours is useful. His is just for movies, whatever.
Yeah, but it looks good.
Yeah, true.
Well, look, we want to thank you for your time. Where can you get the Bobby from?
Online, meetbobby.com.
But look, we want to wish you all the best with the product. I think for people with anxiety, particularly, this is really going to, I mean, for any kind of mental health issue, I think this is going to help them because breathing does help you through a lot of situations.
Yeah. Yeah. In my mind, I'm super confident it's going to help a lot of people, and people that ordinarily won't seek help from psychologists or doctors, they might be more willing to try something at home, and I think that's important.
And we're definitely going to reach out to grab one when we do the next ice bath challenge.
I'll send one.
100%. There you go, Christo. Yeah. Look, and there's no excuse. Look, let's just go. Let's give it a crack. It's going to be the ultimate test for his device.
Damien can come along and do it with us. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Count you in.
Damien, look, all of us are going to do it. We're all going to be holding our bobbies in the ice bath.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Too good.
Damien Thomas from Bobby. Bobby. I want to make sure that we're getting that right because we've said Bobby a couple of times. Yeah. But Bobby, best of luck with the product. And I think, like I was saying, it'll benefit a lot of people with anxiety and other mental health issues. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, guys. Thanks.
Appreciate your time. Holy crap. What a story. Isn't it interesting that so much goes on behind the scenes? I mean, we all assume something goes on.
Oh, yeah.
But to the level and the detail that you've got guys out on the road meeting up with sources.
At a coffee shop.
And they're talking about some serious stuff.
Yeah. And like we could be sitting there with our kids going, oh my God, will you just finish your drink? And next to you could be
someone talking about mass destruction.
Yeah. Look, go and check out his product, the Meat Bobby, because I know that my therapist has said, I want you to do deep breathing exercises. And I feel like a bit of a knob when you're doing it because you just feel self-conscious. Even though there's nobody around to see you do it, you still feel subconscious. So I think something like this will actually benefit knobs like me.
And I think that I'm going to get my wife one so she can breathe through the stupid shit that I do.
I would highly recommend that you do that, yes.
There's going to be one winner of this podcast, and it's my wife.
Anyway, look, Meet Bobby was where you go to, and all the details are in the show notes of this podcast. As per always, you can check us out on our socials at Brown Park Official or at brownpark.com.au.
Check it out, and there's also some merch there if you feel so inclined.
Yep, and please, if you like this episode, subscribe so that we can get the word out about this show, and I'm not afraid to beg for it.
For the love of God, subscribe!
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
The Brown Podcast.
Why are you happy?
Because I don't want to be sad.